start then, Bea?
I think so.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 4 Women, 4 Decades Back to School with Resilience event, special event for 11 to 15-year-olds. So thank you everyone for joining. My name is Bea and I am joined by the wonderful Natalie, Rachel and Rebecca. Rebecca is also my mum, just so everyone's aware, just in case I refer to her as mum and everyone's very confused. So this evening we're going to be having a conversation about what we've seen to be true around resilience and how our minds work and the impact that that's had for us both personally, but also for those around us and the people we work with too. And we're also going to share some of the things that we really wish we'd known when we were back at school, because for some, returning to school in September can be a bit of a nerve-wracking experience. I certainly used to have a lot of those nervous feelings in the days leading up to going back in September, but that is all totally normal. And we'll be talking a lot more about kind of experiencing all of those feelings that come with that, and how it's all okay, really. And obviously this year with the pandemic adds in a factor that might be kind of adding to feelings of worry or uncertainty. So that's kind of we're meeting you where you are right now in this kind of weird time that we're all going through. So we're going to be speaking for the first 40 minutes or so, and then we're going to open up the chat in the second half to answer any questions that you might have. So if you have any, then do hang on to them until then, and we'll open up the chat. You also might notice that we're recording this session. A lot of people who have registered might not be able to attend on the night, so we'll be sharing this around afterwards, so you can always watch it back as well. So to kick us off, I'm going to hand straight over to Rachel.
Thank you very much, Bea. Welcome everybody. It's nice to see some names that I recognise, and welcome to those if this is your first event. I'm really excited about this one. We're really excited about this one. I guess wherever you are, however you're feeling about the return to school, because I remember often really looking forward to September, getting all the new kit or secondhand kit ready, packing bags and thinking about all the stationery and the lessons, but then I would have huge moments of dread and anxiety about specific lessons and specific teachers. And then I would totally enjoy other parts of the curriculum and other experiences at school. So kind of managing a mix of emotions the whole time. And it wasn't until very recently that I learned that that's totally okay and totally normal. So for us as a group of women, we do a lot of talks around resilience and what it means to have some clarity and some peace of mind, no matter what you're facing in your life. And actually, who better to start talking to this about than you? Like, you are the next generation coming after us, and to know this earlier, I would have been far grateful and in much better shape just to know that feeling some of the ways that I felt was okay, or you know, feeling anxiety, that I would have got through it, and I will be okay no matter how I feel. So some of the things I wanted to share when I was thinking about coming back to school was really the idea that a practical start to the conversation, really. So the idea that we should ideally not be comparing ourselves to other people. And it's a big thing. Comparisons are a big thing for many people. As grown-ups, as a nearly 40-year-old woman, I compare myself on a regular basis to people that I shouldn't and wonder why I fall short. And in school, I remember always comparing myself in subjects. Am I as clever as that person? Am I as sporty as that person? Feeling good when I thought I was a bit better than somebody, always being measured. And of course, that's the nature of education, but I kind of wish I'd have known earlier that my own comparisons towards other people and myself against other people, I didn't need to be doing that. And as soon as I started dropping that school life just gets a lot easier and a lot better. Some of the things I didn't know at the time was, while I was busy comparing myself against other people, I was forgetting to pay attention to my lesson. I was forgetting to pay attention to what I was good at. So I'd compare myself and wonder why I wasn't quite as sporty as that person, or why I wasn't quite as good at this subject as that person. And then I'd fail to remember all of the things that I was good at school. I was great at music. I was great at high jump. I've got long legs. I'm really crap at it now. So you kind of forget what you're good at when you're comparing against other people. So as a practical start to the year, I wanted to just share, when you catch yourself doing that, because it's kind of a human thing and we all do it, watch out for it, because it will take your attention away to where it could and should be, which is more around relaxing, learning, having fun, and hopefully being around good people. The other thing I wanted to talk about was friendships. And I know I'm among friends tonight when I speak to you, so this is really nice. So I'll use our group as an example. When I spend time with Bea, Rebecca and Natalie, they expect nothing of me. I can talk to them about anything. I love them and they love me, and it will forever be a safe place and somewhere that I would choose to spend time always. And I remember in high school in particular being with some groups of friends where I absolutely felt that way, and other groups of friends where there was an expectation that I might behave in a certain way. Or there were different groups who may have been older or different, with different things, different activities going on, different ways to enjoy and spend time that I didn't quite feel comfortable with. And those people in the different groups where I felt some level of unease or some level of pressure to be a certain way or do certain things or speak in a certain way or even look in a certain way, those are not the best people for you to spend time with. And sometimes it takes other friends to kind of help you see that. So as a grown-up now, and you're grown-ups too, but as a grown woman, I know when I have a feeling in my gut, in the pit of my stomach, that says this person isn't right, or this person has expectations of you, or this person doesn't want you exactly as you are, as a friend, as a professional, as a human being, then I just very gradually just move away from them. And I guess what I'm saying is to give yourself that real amazing opportunity that you have in front of you to learn stuff, to find out what you're good at in life, to start to really enjoy the education process, because it's actually quite short. It feels really long, I totally know that, but it is quite short in the grand scheme of things. When you can spend time with people who really make you feel amazing, or at the very least don't expect you to perform, do something that you wouldn't have ordinarily done. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, those are the two things. So don't compare. The advert's on the TV, so if you forget, you'll hear it. You'll hear that man singing about comparethemarket.com. No, wrong advert. He's the car guy, isn't he? Go compare. But I've changed the words to don't compare. And I think when you hear that advert, when you hear that music, it will just remind you that you already are, and you will continue to be great at so many things that you don't even know yet. That comparing yourself against other people in the class or other people older than you or elsewhere is unhelpful, and you're already ace. That's my view.
I love that. I love both those things that you've shared there, Rachel. The comparing is something that we do all the time as adults as well. And somebody said, I don't know who it was, some wise person said, comparison is the thief of joy. And I remember, I'm going back a long time now to when I was at school, but absolutely those feelings. And what you talked about, trusting your gut, we've kind of tuned that out, so many of us, because we're living in this world of shoulds, and so aware of the outside world and trying to fit into that, to measure up. So actually I certainly did tune out that voice, and yet it never went away. It was there, but it was something that was it felt inconvenient to listen to it, because I actually did want to be part of that group, or so I thought, because that was the cool group. and I wasn't in the cool group. And I think that that's so important, is to really tune in to that, to trust that core inside you, you know, call it a diamond if you want to, something like that, that is the essence of who you are. It's your guidance system, your own internal navigation that never lets you down. And it's you know, and something when you were talking, something came to mind about, for me as well, that I want to share about being, when we're not tuned into this place within us, which is so easy not to be when we're looking outside, is that we hear what other people are saying and we take it as truth. So what comes to mind is a story, something that happened to me when I was about 13, where my English teacher, and some of you may well have heard this story before, where my English teacher humiliated me, or I felt humiliated by my English teacher, who slammed my exercise book down on the desk in front of me and said, "You have no imagination. How come you're so good at French?" And I was doing Latin at the time, and I'm living in Wales, so I was learning Welsh, and I was good at Welsh. And English, how come you're so useless at that? And so, you know, I could have gone two ways there. One of them was to think, wow, she's having a bad day. I don't believe her. Or, which is what I did, was I believed her because she was my teacher. And I believed her for 35 years that I had no imagination. So, and then something happened and I just thought, wow, she was having a bad day, that's all. And my life changed from that point. So I guess what I want to share is listen in here. So it might be a teacher that's maybe trying to encourage you, but does it in a way that isn't helpful for you. It might be a parent, it might be siblings, it might be your friends, or it might be those that aren't your friends that tell you something that you know is not true. Trust yourself, and you can't go wrong then when you do that. So save yourself the 35 years and tune into what you know is true.
Yeah, gosh, that was such an important lesson, and I certainly saw that in relation to what you were saying, Rachel, around friendship groups, and that all throughout secondary school I was kind of on the edge of a lot of different friendship groups. I never really had I was never part of that kind of the popular group, and there was one. I think I don't know if schools are as cliquey as they were when I was at school, but I imagine they probably are. I don't think that seems to change, but yeah, I felt like I was always on the edge of these friendship groups, and I wasn't ever the first one to be kind of invited to parties or anything like that. And during school I was bullied as well, which was a really horrible experience, but it might be something that you've experienced or someone you know has experienced. And it really knocked me, because I didn't feel like I was good enough, because I was being told that, and I was being deliberately cut out of friendship groups because of who knows what reason. But again, it's looking at that and thinking, what must be going on for those, or for that person who's doing that, in order for them to feel like they have to try and make me feel that way, rather than reading into it and believing certain things about yourself that aren't going to be true. Because because we're all good enough. By default, we are all good enough, and we're all worthy of respect, love, friendship, whatever it is. But that doesn't mean that we have to try and mold ourselves to this idea of what an 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old should look like, or what you think people in your year at school think what you should look like, how you should behave, all that kind of stuff. Because then we start to kind of lose sight of who we really are, which is, as you just said, is always there. But it's just we almost train ourselves to stop listening to it. And I certainly did that for a long time. When I was 14, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. I had anorexia. And that whole time was really just a kind of reflection of all those stories that were going on in my head about how I wasn't good enough, how I didn't deserve to be happy, how I didn't deserve to eat, and all of these beliefs that I had that were kind of merely a misunderstanding, that actually I didn't need to do anything in order to kind of fix myself, or I didn't need any kind of coping strategy to help get me through those feelings, those uncomfortable feelings that I was experiencing at the time, which didn't feel particularly nice. But for me, completely subconsciously, my mind decided that to deal with that, it was going to try and numb it. And my way of numbing was controlling what I ate. So actually, one of the things that we'll talk more about this evening is how we actually kind of deal with our feelings. And I say that loosely because we don't actually have to deal with them. That actually all feelings that we experience, whether it's nerves, anxiety, stress, happiness, whatever it might be, that actually they're all okay, and that we can experience them all without being fearful of them. And for me, I really wish I'd known that when I was at school, because I feel like that would have changed a lot for me, I think.
And I need to jump in here, because when you say we can experience them all, so it doesn't matter what the feeling is. I'm going to stick with this point with you for a minute, because it doesn't matter what the feeling is. When Bee's talking about we can experience them all, and actually all feelings are to be felt, what she means is we don't realize that we feel a certain way and then we move on. We can sit with how we're feeling, so the feeling will just naturally move away by itself. There's no work for you to do. So I know that sounds bonkers if you're listening to that, because it's something very new that the four of us are learning about, and it's so mind-blowing and quite different to how we're raised and taught and how we learn to work in this world. But when you sit with the uncomfortable feeling, even though you're going to be sitting there going, I don't like this, I don't want to feel this way, I want to move past it, if you stop and just experience it and let it be, it just moves on so much more quickly. So that's what Bea is talking about, and this ability that we all have to feel uncomfortable and to stay with it and notice that it's gone moments later.
And the idea that there are no good or bad feelings as well, which again, I didn't know until relatively recently, because so often we're kind of encouraged to get rid of those bad feelings. We're told to cheer up, calm down, stop crying. And so actually this is, without even realizing it, this is kind of this idea that we have to avoid or force ourselves out of those more uncomfortable feelings. Actually, that's not the case. And even though we might enjoy feeling some feelings more than others, it doesn't mean that there's anything bad or wrong about all of those other ones that we might kind of automatically put in the avoid at all costs bucket. But actually, like, what might happen if actually we saw all feelings as equal or as neutral even, and that then we don't have such an issue when they actually come along. And for me, I'm kind of still getting used to that idea, and that when I feel anxious or stressed, sometimes the default is to run in the opposite direction or to distract myself until it goes away. So even we're still very much kind of going through this, and we're not perfect by any means, but it's just reminding ourselves that actually, yeah, I'm feeling anxious right now, and that's okay, it will pass. I felt nervous before we started talking this evening. That's okay, I'm still here, I'm still alive. So actually, yeah, starting to play around with the idea that actually, what if it is okay to feel everything?
That's just been so massive for me, and you know, I'm feeling nervous now and I'm still talking, and it's really okay. And I think these, you know, the emotions that we might have labeled as, oh, I don't like that, doesn't feel nice, or it's bad, you know, we innocently make it bigger and more scary than it is, and we can feel them all, and they're all okay. And the more we just allow that feeling, even though it's uncomfortable, to kind of wash over us, and then leave space for it to go as well. And they move, because none of our feelings are fixed. And every feeling, even though we might not be aware of it, is accompanied by a thought. So we have a thought, and that could be anything, like, you know, it could be one of our beliefs or an idea, or sometimes we're not even aware of the thoughts that are going on in our head. We might know we're thinking something like, oh, what shall I do now? Or we might not be aware of our kind of internal commentary. But every single, our minds are like amazing thought factories. And we're just experiencing thoughts, thousands and thousands and thousands, more than you could count, thoughts a day. And so many that we can't take them all on board, but we get in habits of locking into the same ones that seem to circle around. And, you know, none of them are really true. They're our unique perspectives on things, given how we're feeling in the moment, or what people might say to us, or what we're used to thinking and hearing. And as we grow up, we just look at the world in certain ways. And sometimes we're feeling good, and the English lesson we're in and the teacher seems okay. And other days we're not feeling quite as good, and, you know, we want the ground to swallow us up. And what's changing in that moment is our feelings are changed. But underneath that, even though we might not be aware of it, is that our thinking is changing. And our thinking isn't fixed. It moves and it changes all the time. And more importantly than that, or maybe as equally as important as that, is that we are not our thoughts. And they're mostly not true. They're a version. They're a unique version that we're experiencing. And when we really lock on to our feelings and thoughts like they're true and it's real, then you know, and it feels really compelling. It can feel like, yeah, like when Rebecca was talking about, you know, you've not got any creativity, and in that moment, I'm sure, and for many years, felt really real. But that wasn't real. That was just one person's perception and impression. And I have you know, Rebecca's an amazing author, and you can't do that without heaps of creativity. But we're all creative. It's part of who we are. And we're all resilient. It's part of who we are, my word. If I'd have known that when I was your age. It's who we are. It's our thinking that gets in the way. It's our thinking that stops us from feeling resilient. So you don't need to build any resilience. You're it. But what we're pointing to in this call, which I hope maybe by the end of it you'll get a little flavour of, is sometimes we can experience stuff that takes us away from that connection of resilience. And it feels really real, but it never goes away. Your resilience never goes away.
Oh yes, Natalie, absolutely beautiful. And the metaphor that I love, that we know, that we share, that absolutely points to that, is the idea that we're the blue sky. Okay, that's always there. So even on the greyest and stormiest day, we never ever doubt that there's blue sky behind those clouds. And yet what we're experiencing with that roller coaster of thoughts is our internal weather. And some days the sky's going to be blue and it's going to be sunny and warm, and other days it's going to be a tornado or a snowstorm or torrential rain, or just a lot of low cloud, and that can last for a while, right? But we never doubt that the blue sky, it's always there. And the same goes for us. That's, as Natalie said, that's our resilience. That comes as standard in the human operating system, as Bea said once, which I loved. That's standard. So your resilience and your well-being and your creativity and all of those good things, they're there. We've just built up these layers and layers of labels and thoughts that we then take as truth. So as I said, my English teacher, that one thing that she said, I built that up as a great big wall that I couldn't get past, or so I thought. Because that was the thinking I had that was making me feel not great. But it was my thinking. And we do it all the time. We do it, you know, somebody might, especially, you know, with friendship groups now, if you're, you know, between 11 and 15, and I'm sure a lot of social media that's going on, that somebody didn't respond, or they didn't respond with a certain emoji, or that we read into messages, we read into things and make something true in our minds where it's not. And I'm sure you've all got examples of that, where you've believed something and then somebody said, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that. And that happens all the time. And again, it's all done innocently. So there's no, you know, there's no judging here, no judgment. But it's just, if we can just notice, become aware of our thinking, what we know is true, and that comes back to within us, rather than believing the stories that we're making up. Because we can absolutely get caught down the rabbit hole when we do that, and we'll find evidence to back that up as well.
Yeah, for me, like the question, how much of what you're thinking right now is actually true, was huge, because yeah, we do completely unknowingly get caught up in our own thoughts, in our own worlds, without realizing it, and before we know it, we're down this rabbit hole and we're feeling pretty rubbish. But actually, if we can take that step back and just notice what's going on, because our feelings are a really good guide to how helpful our thinking is in that moment. So if we are feeling really anxious or low or worried or stressed or whatever it might be, those kind of uncomfortable, maybe spiky feelings, that actually maybe it's an indicator that we're inadvertently believing something that isn't particularly helpful. And I used to do that a lot. And I also used to do that a lot when I was getting caught up in the future. I used to, and still do sometimes, get really caught up in worrying about what's gonna happen. What's going to happen later today, what's going to happen tomorrow and the next day, years in the future. Whether that's in relation to an exam or a conversation with a friend or a lesson or whatever it might be. Getting really anxious about this scenario that I was creating in my head without even realizing it. And because it was based on reality, I thought it was something worth worrying about, because it looked like, yeah, that could actually happen. I could go into that exam and just completely freeze and not know what to do, and then fail my exams, and then not get a job, and just end up living goodness knows where with my mum forever. But we can so easily, obviously I'm exaggerating, but we can so easily get tangled up and carried away with those kind of thoughts, because they're really enticing, and we've got such incredible imaginations that we can create those kind of things. But it's just bringing ourselves back to the present, because that's the only thing we can actually deal with, what is happening right now in this moment. Even though we like to think that it's really helpful to prepare for every possible scenario that might possibly happen. Actually, if we show up to situations with a clear mind, or as clear as possible, and just focusing on what's in front of us, then actually maybe that gives us a better chance of actually being able to deal with what's in front of us, rather than being kind of caught up here. Because sometimes when we get caught up here, it's like getting caught in sinking sand, and that actually we get ourselves all tangled up, and then we don't know what to do. But actually, if you kind of imagine a snow globe, kind of when that's all shaken up, that's what we're like a lot of the time. We're caught up in our thinking. So actually, what might be different for you if actually you put that snow globe down and let all those thoughts settle. And sometimes that is easier said than done, because we get really, really caught up quite quickly. And sometimes it's really hard to actually even pause to see what's going on. But actually getting into the routine of listening to how we're feeling and what that might be telling us, and whether or not it's helpful, then that can be a really good starting point.
And a lovely example of that be when we're in the present, because you know we kind of live in the past and worry about things that we may or may not have done, etc. And then, as you've just said, about the future, and you know, it might be like, well, what's it like being in the present? And I think a lovely example of that is when we're lost doing what we love. Okay, so whatever that is, whatever you love doing, whether that's art or music or writing or maths or sport, whatever it is, it's those times where it's kind of like you lose track of time. and suddenly somebody's calling you for dinner, and it's like, wow, where did that time go? That's being in the present. That's where we don't have a lot on our mind. We're not caught up in our thinking. But actually, that is, you know, we've all experienced that, doing something that we love and being utterly absorbed in the present with really not much on our minds at all.
And in like the opposite, when we've got lots of thinking on our minds, and as B says, we got lots of stories going on and chatter going on, and we haven't got any space for new ideas or to see things a bit more clearly, because we've got the opposite of a clear mind. And anyway, I've got this little gizmo to sort of try and illustrate the noise we might have in our head when we've got all these stories. But you know, like, as silly as that, but sometimes our heads can get really noisy with all this, like, oh, the things that used to go on for me were, you know, I'm rubbish at sport because I was never chosen for team games, or I can't do maths, or, you know, I haven't got many friends, or I'll never get a boyfriend, or, you know, and I, you know, it was all just my imagination and stories or things I was worried about. But when I looked into that and focused on it like it was something real or merited my attention, then I wasn't in the present moment. I wasn't feeling in touch with my resilience. I wasn't feeling at my best. I didn't have much space for new ideas and felt low as a result. All because that kind of noisy chatter. And it's all okay and it's all normal. Like, in all of this, it's all normal. But what I didn't know then was what was going on behind the scenes, what was going on with my thinking and my feeling, and I'd look outside of myself because I thought I needed more friends to feel more comfortable and like I belonged, or I needed to be better at maths. I mean, I was fine at maths. I got my GCSE and everything, but you know, I thought I won't be okay unless I've done this XYZ, and missing the bit that actually I really was okay. It's just my thinking that sometimes told me I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think what's helped me as well with the teeth that Natalie just showed you, and this idea of the snow globe. If you think, oh, I won't be okay unless I look a certain way, or I won't be okay unless I'm as good at this subject as somebody else. Each time I think that thought, I have another bit of snow in my brain. So all of those little bits are all the insecure thoughts I'm having. One could be, well, if I don't look like that, I'll never be able to buy the clothes I want to buy. I won't get a boyfriend. I won't pass my exams. I won't be in the popular group. I won't get invited to the club. I won't. All of those thoughts, it keeps going. So my brain is now full of those bits of snow. But if I don't worry about that internal dialogue, it's not that I'm not listening to it, I'm just going to sit still for a minute with it. As a 15-year-old girl or as a 39-year-old woman, I'm just going to sit still and go, what are those thoughts telling me about? I feel weird because I'm having lots of different thoughts. So the thing is that we feel what we think. And now you'll see, you can't see any thoughts. And I feel better. And they didn't do anything. They just go away. And it's absolutely amazing. Not only will they go away, but in the middle of having all of those thoughts, I can carry on with my day. So another thing that when I was younger, I must have been 13 or 14, I remember I got a little bit sad, and I can't quite remember why or what the reason was. But I remember my mum was just so worried about me. She's like, but you're just, you're sad quite often. I don't know why. And maybe we should talk to someone. Like, there was a big kind of panic in the house about Rachel's been sad for a few days. What's wrong with Rachel? And if I'd have known this, I mean, those feelings just went away. So I must have been having thoughts that just weren't very helpful. Or I must have been having comparing thoughts, or just thinking that wasn't actually true. And if I just sit down and let all of that settle, as the 15-year-old Rach, I could carry on and just keep going. And the sooner I stopped judging how I was feeling, the feelings went away, thinking went away, and I had a clear mind. And as 15-year-old Rach, I had new ideas, and I knew who I wanted to spend time with, and I knew what subjects I enjoyed at school, and I knew what day of the week it was, and I knew I had an opinion. And I started to get a sense of my own identity, and I trusted myself. And then a week later, I'd feel really rubbish again. I'm like, oh, why? Rachel's sad again. Oh, no. But actually, I just became aware that when my feelings were not happy, or, you know, and again, I'm not happy all the time either. And none of us are happy all the time. It's impossible to be happy all the time. But when I started to feel a bit funny, or questioning things, or not quite myself, I started to learn that my thinking was probably just not helpful, a bit off track. So now I know that. I trust how I feel. So if I feel funny, I need to check what's going on up here. What am I thinking that isn't true? And I wish I'd have known that in school, because when I felt all of those insecure feelings, or all those weird feelings, I'm a bit sad today, I don't know why. Oh gosh, what's wrong with me? Will I make it through school? Will I make it through the day? Will I be accepted? If I'd have just kind of hushed those thoughts a little bit, and there's nothing for any one of us to do to stop that happening. We just kind of naturally pay less attention to them when you let them all settle. And that's just changed my life recently. But to know this now, I think you can just hopefully all start to judge less how we're feeling, and maybe listen to how we're feeling a little bit more, and then live with a clearer mind, or more of a clear mind more of the time. And then the last piece, I think that, and we'll open the chat in a minute, sorry, the last piece I've just realized is this thing that I've recently learned, which is you can feel all of these things and carry on with your life. So it's not a case of, oh, Rachel's sad, she needs to lie down on the sofa for at least 48 hours. And then every productive person in the world goes, no, it's terrible. It's not the case. You can feel strange, weird, lost, sad, lonely, and carry on with your day. Just as you can when you feel joyful, happy, secure, wonderful, brilliant, ace, clever. So yeah, feel it all and carry on.
That's so true, Rach, because for me, one of the things was with stress and anxiety, I would get, for example, speaking up in class or having to do a presentation made me feel, I hated it so much. And you know, that went on through life, that I would then avoid things because I didn't like the feeling I had. So my life, and just, you know, think about this, if we felt we had to manage or avoid not feeling certain things, then our lives would become smaller and smaller and smaller. So for so long, I mean, you know, at the age of 15, there is no way I would have been able to do something like this, because my thinking was, oh, that's scary. I feel awful. That's telling me not to do it. All right. So I feel it. So, you know, what Rachel's saying here is that we can feel everything. There is nothing wrong with any of those feelings. It's just a signpost. It's like, you know, a barometer, if you like, just warning us to slow down maybe, or just to notice. But we don't need to avoid anything. And numb, which is what, you know, so many, sadly, people, you know, find a coping strategy because they don't like how they feel. And as Bea said at the start, developed her coping strategy for feelings of whatever was to numb, and she numbed by not eating. And if she'd known this then, and if I'd known this, then knowing that all our feelings are valid, we don't need to numb them in any way. And numbing could be hours and hours on social media. Numbing could be Netflix. You know, and there's nothing wrong with any of these things, but it's noticing what we're using it for. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have opened the chat, so if anyone is sitting there with questions that they have specifically that they'd like us to talk to, we are nearing the, you know, we've got the last sort of 12 minutes of the call, but the chat's open, so please feel free to pose any of your questions. And just picking up on the points that Rachel and Rebecca have shared there, just, you know, I, for many years, thought that my uncomfortable feelings, like if I experienced insecure thoughts or nervousness, I, for many, many years, thought that meant that I wasn't good at that. Genuinely thought that was an indication that I shouldn't do that, and that's not what I'm good at. So hence avoiding things like making presentations or speaking in public, or, you know, just things that I thought I had insecure thinking about it. And now what I really see, which I wish I'd known sooner, is that nerve. So this isn't a snow globe, but this is what I use to illustrate the same point. So this is water and sand in a jar, and the water is clear, and when my thinking is settled and my mind is a bit clearer and there's not so many thoughts swirling around, then I can see clearly and I can do what I need to do in the moment with more clarity. But when I have maybe lots of insecure or nervous thinking, then it just doesn't feel as good. It feels a bit yucky. And I used to read that yuckiness, that nervousness, as I'm not good at that. That's the logic my mind came to. So I'd avoid it. And now I know that yucky feeling is just telling me my thinking's off track, that I've got a lot of noise going on, that chattery internal chatter is going 10 to the dozen, and the yucky feeling is telling me to wake up and asking me to just check my thinking. And when I do that, I notice that I've got myself in a bit of a thought storm, and it might take a little while, but it'll pass. But yeah,
and I think that's different to when people say feel the fear and do it anyway. I see them as being kind of slightly different, because in saying that, I think there's this idea of just kind of forcing your way through it, and putting in a lot of effort to kind of put on a mask to, I hate the phrase, but man up and just kind of, deal with it. But actually, this is more of I feel like that's almost like putting on a suit of armor and going into battle. Whereas actually what we're saying is it's kind of the opposite, in that actually we're taking off layers of insecure thinking. So actually now when I have to do things that might make me feel uncomfortable, actually I'm not kind of psyching myself up and doing lots of kind of strategies and things to kind of make myself feel more confident. That's kind of like an adding on process. I mean, before when I was at school, my geography teacher, if you might not know this song if you are aged 11 to 15, but The Eye of the Tiger. And if you haven't heard it, then look it up. It's a great song. But my geography teacher used to play that to us in class before an exam, and it would psych us up. We'd be raring to go afterwards. I mean, he was quite a cool teacher, but actually what we're kind of pointing to is actually that it's more of a settling down, because actually by psyching ourselves up and forcing ourselves to do something that feels uncomfortable, actually often what we're doing is kind of shaking up that snow globe even more. So actually it might feel counterintuitive to do less, and actually just tune into the gut feeling that we have that tells us what we need to do in that moment. And that might be to go out and go for a walk, or just to sit by yourself before you go into an exam or something like that, rather than maybe all of the other things that all your friends might be doing to make themselves feel confident.
We've had a really interesting question in the chat that I'd like to put to you ladies. It's a question of two parts, and just if you could talk to this about, you know, should we be a friend to everyone? And the second part to the question is, how can you stop the chat, and what does living with it for a moment mean?
Lovely. I'll go first because it's just how I roll. I love that question. I love both of them. So, can you be a friend to everybody? I think we'll all have different perspectives on that one. I think we are all human beings. So, you know, the old sayings around treat others as you'd like to be treated, all this kind of stuff, I think rings true forever. So we will endeavour to always be respectful, inclusive to others. But I think if you are surrounding yourself with people who make you at any point feel uncomfortable, or in any way that you need to perform, or that you need to look a certain way or sound a certain way, then my view would be you wouldn't need to be so friendly with those types of people, and that friendship is an inclusive, welcoming, safe space. So I tend to put much more of my energy, love and joy into the relationships where I feel those things, and I will be respectful to everybody else. In terms of how can you stop the chat, so in my world, I listen to it for a moment, and I think I realize what I'm doing, in that I feel uncomfortable, so I know I've got some chat in my head that is not welcome here. So rather than actively doing anything to stop it, I don't add to it. I don't add anything. I just kind of sit, and it goes by itself. As soon as I start adding more thoughts to it, if I'm thinking, oh, I won't pass the exam, oh, I won't get the job, oh, I won't, as soon as I hear more, oh, I won't, I know I'm adding to it. So I kind of let that stop. But there's nothing actively that I'm doing. I just kind of stop, hear the thought, notice it's not true, and it will go very quickly, a bit like the cloud passing over the sky.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, that once we notice that what we're thinking might not be true, then actually that takes out a lot of the power that we might currently think it has over us. So actually, once we can almost see through the illusion of what our thoughts might be telling us, then actually they kind of leave on their own, because it's like, oh, busted. she's figured it out, that actually I'm not true, so I can leave now. And then just quickly on I know we had another question through on the first point about, do we need to be friends with everyone? No. I think we can so easily, as I mentioned earlier, that we so often, and I did this a lot, I tried to mold myself to be someone to everyone, that to fit in with this friendship group, I would try and be like them and like the same things that they liked to fit in with them. And then to fit in with this friendship group, I would try to be like them. And so actually it's a really exhausting process and not a very fulfilling one, because actually in doing so, in doing all of those things, you're not actually showing up as you. And so people haven't actually got a chance to know you, like the real you. And that's where you find your real friends, your true friends, that I didn't actually find until I really went to university. And so it's okay not to be friends with everyone. It's okay for people not to like you. And I know that can feel like quite a stressful thought, because I thought that everyone had to like me at school. But actually, what people think of you is kind of none of your business, which I'm just kind of getting to realizing now. But actually, if you just show up as yourself, your true self, and then see what happens, then actually that's probably where you're going to connect with and attract the people who are going to be those real friends. I hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'll come to the question from Anthony here. And it's interesting, because you're kind of the question at the end, how can I implement coping strategies? It's like, I don't want to give you a coping strategy to deal with what she's got, which is a coping strategy, if that makes sense. And I'm just wondering, B, that you and I, in our videos, although we're pointing to eating disorders, it's the same thing, in that what we talk to is that it's relevant to everything, whatever we're going through. So it's maybe sharing this video, this conversation that we've had with her, and it's pointing back to the resilience that she's got. And we might never be able to, we might never be able to find exactly what it is that triggers it. Like with B's anorexia, we never got to the bottom of, well, it was this thing that this person said that then caused all of this to happen. But if we can see that it's a coping strategy, that if we look to, as we've been saying, that who we really are is this diamond or the blue sky, is to keep pointing in that direction, rather than trying to create more pressure on giving things that we've then got to remember to implement to help us fight this coping strategy. And I know that probably doesn't help right now, where you are right now. But this is where the freedom comes, is when we keep, as we talk about, we going upstream, okay, to the source of understanding about who we really are, so that we don't need then to believe our thinking, because that's what's going on. We believe the thinking because we're getting a feeling, and as all of us have shared, that's then taking us, it looks like truth, and it's taking us further away from the blue sky, if you like. So what we can do, I'm just wondering whether we'll be sending out this recording anyway, is that whether there's a video, I'll have a think, B, and you can as well, whether there's a particular video that we can include in that as well, which, but don't hesitate to come back with any questions, via email. That would be fine.
Wow. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, I've just seen the time, and we're going to be running slightly over the hour. So if you need to go, feel free. But I think we do want to kind of make sure we end this, and there is something I wanted to share, which I think nicely sums up some of the things we've been talking about this evening. And it's a letter written by a lovely lady called Mavis Khan, and it's called The Secret. And forgive me, because I'm going to need to look down as I read it and then look up. Dear kids and former kids, I have a secret to tell you. Nobody meant to keep it from you. It's just that it's been one of those things that's so obvious that people couldn't see it. Like looking all over for that key that you left in your hand. The secret is that you are already completely whole, perfect person. You're not damaged goods. You are not incomplete. You are not flawed. You are not unfinished. You do not need remodeling, fixing, polishing, or major rehabilitation. You already have within you everything you need for a wonderful life. You have common sense, wisdom, genius, creativity, humor, self-esteem. You are pure potential. You are missing nothing. The only thing that can keep you from enjoying all that you already are is a thought. One thought. Your thought, not somebody else's thought, your thought. Whatever thought you are thinking at the moment that feels more important to think than feeling grateful, alive, content, joyful, optimistic, loving, and at peace. That's the only thing that's between you and happiness. And guess who's in charge of your thinking? Guess who gets to decide where your attention goes? Guess who gets to write, produce, direct, and star in the moment you're in the middle of? You, just you. Not your past, that's stored thought. Not your future. Did you ever really notice it never shows up? Or your friends, ditto. Not your parents, they're thinking their own thoughts. Or your friends, ditto. Or school, or television, or situations, or circumstances, or anything else. Just you. Thinking is an awesome capability. Like any capability, it can be used either as a tool or as a weapon against ourselves and others. And just like with any other tool, we can tell whether we're using it for or against ourselves by how it feels. When we think against ourselves or others, we get in trouble. When we don't, we usually stay out of trouble. Feelings exist to warn us away from using our thinking to create trouble in our lives and to guide us back to our natural, healthy ability to live our lives to the fullest. So, please remember that your thoughts are not always telling you the truth. When we're in low moods, feeling down, our thoughts are not to be trusted. Our IQs drop. When our thoughts pass and we lighten up, our thinking is once again creative and positive, and our IQs go up. The only way you can feel badly about yourself and your life is if you think badly about them. It's up to you. Every single moment you're alive, it's always up to you. This is the best, most liberating secret I ever learned, and I want you to know it too. It's a pretty fantastic secret to those listening.
Oh, thank you, Natalie. That is beautiful. We will share that as the requests are coming into the chat. We are slightly over. Thank you for staying with us. That's all we wanted to share this evening. However, we could probably stay here and talk for 5 more hours, but we'll stop here, except to say that, you know, final thoughts from us would be that you are resilient by default. Every single one of us here is. That is the factory setting. That we can feel everything and that that's okay. that you can accept and allow how you feel. And bottom line, and tell your mates to trust yourself. Trust the heart, trust the gut feelings that you have, trust that you know what's right for you, trust yourself. You'll hear more from us in different events, but this one tonight was for 11 to 15-year-olds. We hope it's been useful. Thank you for everybody's comments. I'll ask Natalie to stop the recording so we can wave goodbye, but thank you for joining us this evening, and good luck in September.